needs that of the scribes and the Pharisees, you won't enter the kingdom. The kingdom we're offering in Antioch is superior to what they're offering in Yavne. We've got the real kingdom of God here. And you've got to do more than those rabbis in Yavne. Example number 1, murder. You have heard that it was said to those of ancient times, you shall not murder. And that's important, by the way. As I've said a million times, it doesn't say thou shalt not kill. It says thou shalt not murder, which is killing without justification. A soldier is not a murderer. He's a killer, but not a murderer. You shall not murder, and whoever murders shall be liable to judgment. All right, that's clear in the Ten Commandments. But I say to you, so here is a rabbi, Jesus, who's willing to say, Moses said A, but I say something more. I say to you that if you are angry with a brother or sister, you will be liable to judgment. If you insult a brother or sister, you'll be liable to the council. If you say, you fool, you'll be liable to the hell of fire. Wow, that's intensifying. That's not saying forget the law. It's saying take the law and make it infinitely more pressing. It's not just killing somebody literally, it's insulting someone in public. It's an act of murder. You're killing his spirit. Interestingly enough, in the Talmud, produced by the Pharisees, it says exactly the same thing. He who humiliates his brother in public, it is as if he has taken a life. So the rabbis of that day, Jesus included, were busy intensifying the law. It's not just shooting somebody or stabbing them, but actually killing them with words. Taking away their human dignity is an act of killing. So when you are offering your gift at the altar, if you remember that your brother or sister has something against you, leave your gift there before the altar and go. First be reconciled to your brother or sister, and then come and reconcile yourself to God. Well, again, that's in the Talmud. On Yom Kippur, we Jews are taught that before we go into the synagogue for a 10-hour service of repentance and fasting, you have to call up during the 10 days before Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, between Rosh Hashanah, the Jewish New Year, and the Day of Atonement. You make a list of the people you've offended over the year, and you get on the phone and you call them, and you apologize. I've had people call me, it's remarkable, and say, I said this or that about you behind your back, and I want to apologize, because if I don't get your forgiveness, I can't get God's forgiveness next week. And they're obliged to apologize from the heart. I'm obliged to forgive them. And then they go to synagogue and ask God to forgive them. But you can't ask God to forgive you for hurting someone else unless you go to that someone else first and get his or her forgiveness, which is a lot harder because God doesn't talk back to most people, but people do. It's very hard to go up to someone you really can't stand and say, I'm so sorry I said that. Forgive me. And then if he says, I don't forgive you, you've got to wait a day and go back again. I don't forgive you. One more time. Next day you go back again. And now he knows, everybody knows the rules. The way the people Jesus is talking to here are the inner church community, they know the rules. And the third time you apologize, he's got to forgive you. If he judges the apology is from the heart. Because if he doesn't, then your sin against him is transferred to him, so that it's as if he sinned against you. So everyone knows the rules. You can hold out twice, but the third time you're really better if you have any sense. If you want God to forgive you, you've got to forgive the other guy. And that's the burden of Jesus here. If you want to be forgiven, you have to forgive. So what Jesus is saying is not unique. It's part of the rabbinic teaching of that time. But of course he says it so eloquently, as he always does. So first be reconciled to your brother or sister, and then to God. And now he gives some practical advice. Sometimes he's very practical. Come to terms quickly with your accuser, verse 25, while you're on the way to the court. Or your accuser may hand you over to the judge, and the judge to the guard, and you will be thrown into prison. Truly I tell you, you'll never get out until you've paid every penny. In other words, if you're a debtor, you could go to debtor's prison. So do everything you can to pay your brother back. just for practical reasons, to avoid debtor's prison. Good advice. Verse 27. Second point, we've done murder, how murder is not just stabbing or shooting somebody, but murder is hurting someone's feelings profoundly. Now the second, verse 27. You have heard it was said, you shall not commit adultery. Well, that's obvious. You're married. You don't carry on with other women. But I say to you that everyone who looks at a woman with lust, oh boy, has already committed adultery with her in his heart. Remember poor President Carter went on television, oh, how many times he's lusted. I wonder what his wife thought of that confession. But so that's very hard. The Talmud says something similar. If your lust begins to mock you, because you're looking at the woman, look into the Bible, focus on the page, and you'll be all right. As long as you don't find the story of David and Bathsheba, then you'll get into trouble. All right, so of course, Jesus is not, what Matthew is saying is, he's not saying that the commandments don't work because we're all such sinners. He's saying they don't go far enough. The rabbis are right, but they don't go far enough. It isn't just actually committing adultery. It's even thinking about it. He's trying to control our inner thoughts. Now that's a good idea, to try to do that. How possible it really is very difficult. I mean, you can sort of force yourself away from the lustful thoughts by focusing on something higher, I suppose. You can, but he's advising doing it. But I think realizing how very difficult that is. If your right eye, and no rabbi would ever say this. Rabbi, I've been looking at women lustfully. He says, well, just don't do anything about it. As long as you don't do anything. Well, that's the Jewish emphasis on doing. Jesus is trying to go deeper and say it's the motive. Well, that can be very admirable, but it can also be terribly frustrating, because how do we control our inner thoughts? If your right eye causes you to sin, tear it out and throw it away. It is better for you to lose one of your members than for your whole body to be thrown into hell. I don't think he's being literal, but the eye is, if the way you look at things is getting you into trouble, then adopt a new point of view. Don't look at women as slabs of meat to gratify your lust. Think of them as human beings. I mean, I have never even had a computer until a few weeks ago. Get a computer. I finally got it. And Comcast managed to destroy my phone service and the computer service and the television. I've never seen such incompetence. But finally it's getting, that means I have never in my life seen pornography. I must be the only male American who, I don't even know how to get it on the computer. Somebody must tell me, but not in church. So I remember the only time I saw a pornographic movie was when I was in college at a fraternity gathering, and somebody brought his little brother, and I was horrified. And I remember the men never took their socks off, and they all had these little pencil-line mustaches. It was just grotesque. And I kept thinking, those women who are degrading themselves, they have mothers, they have fathers. They were once in a cradle somewhere. How could they do that to themselves? And how can we sit here cheering this on when people are degrading the image of God in which they were created? I just couldn't get into it. I thought it was horrifying. And what people are willing to, and look what's happening now with this election. Trump is so, forgive me for the partisan views, but Trump has so degraded the dialogue in this country that poor Rubio has now been dragged down to the same level and is talking about bodily fluids and functions. And it's disgusting. I thought that debate Thursday night was disgusting. You can't believe how low the political dialogue has been dragged by one man. And no one has well, Kasich says, this is nuts, this is crazy, what's going on here? But he's not getting any votes. So maybe that's what people want. We've been so corrupted. All right, so Jesus says, if your right eye causes you to sin, tear it out. If your right hand causes you to sin, cut it off. Well, Origen, one of the great founders of the church, read this verse and castrated himself. It wasn't his hand or his eye that was getting him into trouble. So But that's what he did. He took it literally. It means get rid of anything that overwhelms your God consciousness, that distracts you from the higher form of life and drags you down into the gutter. Get rid of it. And to find saying, not to be taken literally, but metaphorically, it's very powerful. It is better for you to lose the use of those members, whatever it is in your life that's degrading your consciousness, get rid of it, or else your whole life will be degraded. And that's what's happening to our political life, unfortunately. All right, so we'll continue. Now, next week, I will be in New York. No, I'll be back. I'll be back because I'm taking a plane from New York Sunday night. My aunt's 100th birthday. And it'd be wonderful to see her. And then I'm coming back, as long as the plane takes off on time. If it doesn't, I'll call, whom should I call to tell everyone I won't be here?
You're coming in Sunday night.
I am, but this is United Airlines. They're like Comcast. I mean, you don't know.
Oh, you'll have to come in the morning.
We'll come at noon, and I'll do my best to be here. If the plane takes off on time, I'll be here.